All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty intense. What happens when extreme adventure guides completely fail in their most basic duty, which is, keeping you alive. We're going to be looking at some chilling real-world cases of negligence, abandonment, and the absolute fatal price of trusting the wrong person out in the wild.
So, ask yourself, would you trust a total stranger with your life in the dark? It's a heavy thought, right? Because whenever we enter wild spaces, whether we're scaling a mountain, trekking through a jungle, or, say, descending into a cave, we willingly hand over our safety to professionals. We just assume they know best. But sometimes, as our sources today tragically outline, that trust is catastrophically misplaced.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Abandoned in the Dark. Buzzard's Roost Cave, 1995. Imagine being in this physically demanding, incredibly claustrophobic nightmare, relying entirely on one person to lead you out. That person was guide Gordon Harden. And the timeline of this event is just truly agonizing. So at 0 minutes, the group reaches a really deep section of the cave near a 20-foot hanging ladder. They're running a bit behind schedule. Harden tells the group to wait, and then, unthinkably, he climbs the ladder to go make a phone call, literally leaving them completely alone. 30 minutes pass. The temperatures are dropping, panic is setting in, and they are stuck in total, suffocating darkness. No radio, no guide. At 60 minutes, nearly an entire hour later, Harden finally returns, but he discovers a horrific accident. A man in the group named Bill Coughlin, who was anxious and unable to wait any longer, had actually tried to climb that twisting cable ladder in the dark all on his own. He lost his grip and suffered a massive fall onto the rocks below. And, this tragedy was massively compounded by a fatal lack of preparation. Harden hadn't brought a two-way radio. He had no medical kit. Actually, scratch that, he had absolutely no emergency supplies whatsoever. Because of this, he couldn't immediately call for emergency services, wasting precious time that Bill just didn't have. Despite rescuers eventually extracting him, Bill Coughlin tragically died from severe brain injuries the very next day. Moving on to Section 2, The Deadly Shortcut. Datumla Falls, 2016. We're shifting from the sheer terror of abandonment to the catastrophic results of unauthorized risk-taking.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark, lethal contrasts between these diverging paths. On one hand, you have the authorized route. This means permitted tours, correct safety equipment, and supervised checkpoints as you go through the thick jungle and cascading water. But then, you have the guide's route. A 26-year-old guide named Dong Von Sai chose a completely unauthorized path, one that was explicitly marked as dangerous by local authorities. His group lacked the correct equipment, they bypassed the official safety checkpoints entirely, and worst of all, they were led down a natural water slide with a lethal drop completely hidden from view.
50. That is the terrifying number of feet that a massive waterfall dropped just 14 meters beyond the edge of the rock pool they splashed into. To put that into perspective, that's roughly a 5-story drop waiting right around the corner. The guide never adequately warned the group about this lethal hazard, and the current in that pool was far stronger than it looked. Before anyone could even react, 3 young British tourists, Beth, Izzy, and Christian, were unexpectedly swept over that 50-foot drop to their deaths. Section 3, Ignoring the Monsoon Warning. Talu Cave, 2007. Here, the stakes escalate into a mass casualty disaster fueled by just unbelievable systemic arrogance. The cascade of ignored warnings here is truly shocking when you break down exactly what happened. Listen to this. First, park rangers explicitly warn the 2 Thai guides of a fast-rising river inside the cave. Second, local villagers literally tell them it's extremely dangerous. Third, there are huge bilingual warning signs right at the entrance strictly prohibiting entry due to deadly flash floods. And fourth, an official monsoon season closure was already in place. Yet unbelievably, the guides ignored every single one of these explicit warnings and marched a group of 8 tourists, including a 10-year-old boy, straight into the dark tunnel. Just 20 minutes in, the terrifying reality of their negligence struck. Survivors described a massive wall of water, over 33 feet high, surging through the cave like a freight train. The sheer, deafening intensity of this flash flood is almost unimaginable. It hit the group with brutal force, instantaneously sweeping people off their feet, dragging bodies underwater, and plunging the entire tunnel into just screaming darkness. 20 agonizing hours in the dark. That's how long British tourist Helena Carroll clung to a narrow rock ledge high up above the rushing waterline.
By some absolute miracle, she found that ledge in the total chaos and managed to pull herself up. For 20 hours, she shivered in pitch blackness, terrified, having no idea if anyone else had survived. Ultimately, she was the only survivor. The other 8 members of the group, including the 10-year-old boy and both of the guides, drowned. Section 4. History repeats itself. Talu Cave, 2024. You would think a mass tragedy of that magnitude would change safety protocols forever, but we return to Talu Cave. So the crucial point is 17. Because exactly 17 years later, another guide entirely ignored history and led a massive group of 22 tourists right back into the very same deadly tunnel. The 2024 disaster setup is chillingly identical to 2007. You have a 37-year-old guide named Pongus Kurdi leading 22 foreign tourists to the cave. There are clear, massive official Department of National Park signs stating, "Closed from June to November." It had already been raining heavily in the mountains for 2 consecutive days, and once inside the 600-meter cave, there is absolutely zero cell phone signal. Pongus Kurdi arrogantly bypassed those obvious closure signs, walking his group right into a trap. And at 7:30 in the evening, a wall of rainwater surged into the cave yet again. And this brilliantly illustrates this senseless negligence when you draw the parallels side by side. Both disasters happen at the exact same location, Talu Cave. Both were caused by flash floods. Both involved completely ignoring official monsoon season closures. The only difference this time, park rangers rushed to the scene and heroically managed to save the 22 tourists, though 2 did suffer leg injuries. But the fate of the guide, just like in 2007, Pongus Kurdi was swept away by the current. His body was found hours later in the dark waters. Section 5, Surviving Extreme Exploration. The Price of Trust. Because these aren't just horrifying stories, right? They contain critical takeaways for all of us about personal responsibility and situational awareness in extreme environments. So, next time you step into the unknown, who are you really trusting? Just because someone wears a badge or has the title of guide certainly doesn't mean they're infallible or even acting in your best interest. These source materials remind us that when we venture into the wild, we can never ever completely surrender our own survival instincts, even when we're paying a professional. You've got to keep your eyes open, respect the warnings, and never blindly follow someone into the dark. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and hey, remember to always stay safe out there.